This is the Dog Psychology Podcast with Linn, Todd Langston, and Art Ortiz.
Here's one for you, Linn, on that. When you were talking about Bill Barr's dog,
Bill Burr,
Burr, and you said that you went as far as you could with that dog, and then you'll take it to the vet's office, and we understand the association of things like that. But do you ever have a moment where you question the path? You question what you did, like where you start to go, should I be going something completely obscure? Should I be using a clicker for this dog? Should I be going against what my instinct in dog psychology is telling me, just to see if it's fully stuck or damaged, or if it is something that I could change?
Well, I think dog psychology allows for improvisation, that way to figure out something that will work. So as far as Cleo goes, she, like I said, it was during that blue nose pit bull surge. I had so many of them that had wires crossed, and she actually had a dent in her head. So I think something was really messed up in there. The behaviors that she displayed were extreme. I'm not sure that has much I could do with dog psychology, is just manage where I am. And I believe that the things that were stuck permanently that were good, like going to the vet, were so ingrained in her. She loves me. She loves Bill. She loves Nia. She loved the people at the vet. She went so much because he's a comedian, travels so much, went to the vet so much in her early days, that just part of the family. So at that point, it becomes such a high level association. But she had all of the behaviors inside there. When left alone in her run, she still would become anxious and require a lot of things. Now she's got dogs. Now that there's no people that she's associated with, they're the dogs. So I have no control over that. At that point, that is where I have to let go and let them do their thing, because I can't be there. Otherwise, I most likely wouldn't have left her there. But that's where she would go, and Bill was comfortable. The main reason why I would take her there was, one, she didn't try to kill anybody when I took her in there. And two, when I traveled, Bill got to go over and take her for walks because it was close by his house. Those were the main reasons why I went there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone. She's a different case. We could pick all kinds of things to talk about her. But as far as, going the wrong direction with a specific dog, or rephrase it, I guess. I think that's a more difficult one. It's not as common as the dog.
I think what he's asking is, like, do you question yourself when you're working with the dog, is from what I understand. And is that how I'm?
Well, kind of, yeah, because I had a dog that it was a Frenchie, and when it was born, it had hydrocephalus, right? So it had an issue where there's water, fluid on the brain, and it's often fatal, right? So it can kill him. And he lived.
Or it expands, and they look like they've got this
large a little bit as the fluid builds up. Now he recovered, and in a standpoint of, to me, what I look at and see and observe, he was, by all aspects, I would say, normal. I've seen dogs that the pattern of the way they aggress or the way that they move, or I even had a dog that its eyes were disconnected in a way that none of that was there. But this dog was so impossible. It was so impossible that the point is it brings in doubt, because part of me goes, it has to be because of this hydrocephalus. And then part of me goes, I'm never going to give that excuse. I don't ever want to give too much of a reason to think that it wouldn't work. And that's kind of the point that I'm making, is like, at what point are we, just like you said, as far as we can go with it, and we have to accept that that's the ceiling? Like, at what point did you realize you were at the ceiling with her?
Oh, that was pretty early on. She was pretty intense. I think a better case to discuss would be Monty, which was another blue nose pit bull. Like I said, I had a bunch of them at that time, and that guy had the worst resource food aggression guarding issues than I've ever seen in a dog. And it was the only issue. The only issue. That was the only issue. Otherwise, his dog was perfect.
So worse By what? What would he do? What made it so bad?
Well, it took 9 months before I could even have the owner come and feed the dog for the first time. So that should give you an example of how extreme it was. He was violent. Now, again, with the information I have, I believe that the mother said no again, because the mother would not feed the dog. And then so the backyard breeder wanted to make money, so he put it away and bottle fed it. And then when it was time to eat real food, he put it back with the puppies. Now, the puppies had the same association the mother did, and they would fight Monty. They would try and kill him. And so, again, the backyard breeder pulled him out because he didn't want to have a damaged dog and would feed him. But by now, Monty is defending himself at a high level. And so this guy would try to feed him, and Monty's going crazy. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And so he'd look, no, slap and move and try to get away and not get bitten, and throws the food in there and shuts the door. That then develops a new experience for Monty. And that's where I came in, was 2 years later, to attempt to change that now embedded, imprinted thing from birth. And he was a Rain Man kind of guy, Judge Wapner, 4 p.m. And so I created
Ray.
Yep. I created, it took me a while to find that Goldilocks. I did every possible thing. And let me tell you, any kind of physical, correction or what have you was the worst thing. And I found that on early on. And I took a lot of bites from this guy. I took a lot of chances with him. It's a really great case because I got a lot of footage of showing what an actual dog does when they're resource guarding. They're not aggressive, or true ones. They're not aggressive. They just want you to leave the space. So they will be aggressive in that space between the food and you. But as soon as you reach this outer limit, it doesn't go forward. It doesn't try to do anything. But you got to weather that storm, that nanosecond storm where it's just teeth and noise. And if you do that, then literally, I got footage, just step out of the run there and he doesn't come forward. So that I incrementally worked my way in. I still was high level, the dog psychology thing, trying to do it the way I was taught, and, helping the dog understand it's mine and it'll be yours. And I allowed him to, express himself on me, toward me. And once I got inside the run, you remember my runs over there on, in wherever it was, they were 4x8. And, so once I knew he wasn't coming out of the threshold, I started working my way inside the threshold and then get down on my hands and knees or squatting down face to face, and he would make his lunges. So what I did with him is I whittled it down. So he very loud and violent. And so I took away all the noise. That I wouldn't feed until the noise was gone. I didn't mind that he lunged at me. I didn't mind that he snapped at me. Even if he got a hold of me, as long as he didn't make noise, he got the food. So I had to really shape it. So the noise went away first. Then the lunging didn't get, as soon as he stopped lunging, even if it was for a nanosecond, then there's no lunging. I put the food down and leave so I can get a couple of things in a row, a pattern for him to connect to. And then we went down to the no snapping. Then we went down to the no snarling and no growling. And it just whittled it down to the point where you will have this food, I swear to you, after this is gone, after this is gone, after this is gone, after this is gone, after this is gone. Then I got to the point where I just walk up with the bowl. He makes I just walk away with the bowl. He sits down, and then I bring the food in. It took so long to get him to that point. Now, here's where we were kind of talking about failures and when do we say quit or not.
Or when do we change our approach?
Yeah, where do we change our approach? And I'm constantly changing my approach, but it's all the same approach. It's just, I'm throwing a curveball, I'm throwing a fastball, I'm throwing I'm peaking. I'm doing the same thing. It's just a little bit different angle. Mm-hmm. Now, I only feed once a day, and his only problem was food. So there's no way I'm going to take 23 hours and 45 minutes for him and then just feed once. There's no success rate. So I took his one meal and I broke it down into 6 meals. And sometimes it would take an hour before he would get to that point where I could reward that moment. Now, what I was doing inside my own head during that time is trying to figure out, why isn't this working? Why isn't that working? I'm doing everything. Now I got to the point where all the dogs anticipated my work with Monty, so they would start up. I mean, I had to back up, begin again, start over a different angle, and until I got it all down. But I had to figure out, and I did this with other cases as well. Why isn't it going as smoothly? Why isn't it going as quickly? And so what I do is dogs won't follow anybody that has the same issues as they have, in my opinion. And so if the dog has resource guarding and I have resource guarding, which we all know I do, it's going to be very difficult. And so this was the first time I addressed my hiding food into my 20s when I didn't need to hide my food at all after I was 11, but I did into my 20s, hiding food, not like, just like a dog would bury a bone, I put this here, it'll be here when I get back. And even if I didn't need it. So I addressed that. I focused on that. And I'm like, oh my God. And I mean, a whole night, I didn't even sleep. I was like, what? Holy shit. This is a new can of worms. I don't know if I want to open it, but I did open it. I looked at it and I accepted that I don't need to do that. And I'm telling you what, man, the next day, boom, easy. And that's when I confirmed in my brain that dogs will not follow anybody that has the same issues that they have. It's equal. So then it started to excel and move forward. And then I had the owner come down, and of course, down the line, they couldn't keep the Rain Man structure. All they had to do was tell me they needed to change something. But he's in college in Santa Barbara. So, you got parties and shit to think about, and you forget. You got roommates, and he bit his roommate's hand. Now, this isn't a landscaper we're talking about a Japanese garden designer. And if he loses his hand, he's lost an entire career. Yeah. So at that point, he had to make a decision. It's unfortunate.
Put in all that time. And let's talk about decision making way back at the beginning of that, understanding people are about as predictable as they get, and knowing that if it takes you 9 months to move inches and millimeters at a time, and the expectations of humans, and my expectation is they may be able to give 20% of what I can give. That might be generous, and that's just based on experience and knowledge. Like, where do you put that? How do you?
It's also because the people don't see the small things either. They want. I think sometimes we make things look fast, but there's a lot of little things that are going on that make it look fast. And sometimes they do take a long time. And Linn always has a quote that I love. It's all doesn't matter how long it takes. It only matters that you take the time.
Right. I'm a rhymer, so it doesn't matter how much time. It only matters that you take the time.
Yeah.
But you're right. This guy took the time, though. He drove down 2 and sometimes 3 times a week from Santa Barbara to LA and then back. That's a long drive just to spend 30 minutes with me to feed his dog. So he put in a lot of time and effort. I trusted the guy, but I didn't think past him that he lives with a bunch of other college students and they're going to do stuff that's different.
Do you think it had anything to do also with the environment? Because as you know, the environment itself can change everything as well.
Only food. So that environment had a lot of food, teen, young 20s, coming home drunk, getting some pizza, drop the pizza, pick it up in the 2-second rule. I can still eat it, wipe up the grease, but not scrub it up. And so it still smells like
smells still there.
It's clean, but dogs, their olfactory system. And then he started looking at it. Anybody walk by, grab a leg. It didn't matter if it was just his feeding time. They had to be careful past that. Anytime food was present, and they did great. He did great. I mean, he had him for months before they broke the pattern. So I was thinking, wow, this is a high level success story. And I believe that it still was, because I addressed some issues in me. We reached a common ground of understanding, me and Monty. He never believed I was trying to hurt him. But during those moments, he was very instinctual. And I tell you, the time that my roommates took food out and I came out with my, Cali sticks, I literally was Monty at that moment. I didn't even need the food that they took. I knew that they're from families, so they would replace the food. It just clicked, switched, boom. And that's what had happened with Monty. Switch that moment. And, but I have a video of him sitting I posted it a while ago, because, I get with people who want to train dogs, but they were not willing to learn or spend time. And so I'm like, here's a 25-minute video that I cut down from 45. If you can't sit and watch this dog be intense about the food, and I'm not even there, it's just the bowl on the other side of the fence. If you can't watch him, he sees me putting food in other dogs and he gets more, you can't watch him be focused for 25 minutes. How can you be a trainer? And it's really a crazy little video. You just anticipate me coming over, but I'm going to the run next to him or down the line. He's just looking at it. It's pretty intense behavior. But
what I like that you said, Linn, about the dog psychology is being, kind of open to taking not different routes.
Improvisation.
Just kind of improvising it, and it's weird because
Caesar made a career out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Tying a tail up to hold the leash.
Yeah. So yesterday I worked with a dog, and I came home and Anne's like, Anne always asked me, how did your session go? And I was like, it went really well, but I did something I've never done before, and it just kind of came to me in the moment. And what I did, it was a woman who had a dog for 7 years, a little fluffy dog, and she has fostering another larger dog, 30-pound little terrier, scruffy little terrier. And when I was working with them, I noticed that the resident dog, because she says, she resource guards the food. And I asked her to explain that to me. And she's like, she kind of growls when other dogs get near her.
How old is it?
So the dog is 7. So she's had 7 years of practice. And she admitted, she's like, I know I've had 7 years of practice. And so kind of working through this. And so the foster dog had an issue if she only had the dog for a week. And she wants to keep the dog, but she's like, I have to get over this separation anxiety, because the dog was super calm, super chill. But the minute she left, the dog would start howling and whining and crying.
How old is it?
Great. Just over a year. Okay. Plenty of, it's still very fresh. And so she was like, I don't know if we can't get over this anxiety, then I don't know if I can keep her. And I was like, just so confident. I'm like, this dog was amazing, by the way. Like I said, you got to keep this dog. I know you see the anxiety, but we can work through this. And I'll tell you what I did. And it happened by accident, how I figured it out. And so we'd gone on a walk and kind of get some of the energy out. We'd come back. And then when we came in, the other dog, the resident dog, was in there and was eating cereal, had found some cereal on the floor and was eating it. And she goes, there's the food. Like she's about to start guarding it when the other dog comes in. And so this dog is in the laundry room eating pieces of cereal. And so I'm there, and she turns around, looks at the foster dog, growls, but not anything forward moving, just communication. The dog stops at the threshold of the door, just stops there, right? And I was like, this is interesting, because the resident dog is able to control this other dog by just making a sound. And so then what happened was I moved the crate in front. I put the resident dog in front of the pathway behind that dog, so that when we left, that dog was mentally created a threshold. And
That's right.
I just kind of stumbled across this, and then we left. I actually filmed it. I actually have a before.
I want to see it.
Yeah. And so the dog went from pacing, howling, barking to laying down, just kind of. So I was like, this is a good sign. Even though she hasn't completely relaxed and settled, she got to a point that is way better than what she was when I first got here.
Can I tell you what I see, even though I wasn't there, from what you're telling me?
Of course.
So the separation anxiety is due to a relationship issue, right? And humans don't see things the way dogs do, so they add to the problem. The resident dog had whatever she called it, that had resource guarding. It wasn't controlling the dog; it was communicating. So, out of respect, the 1-year-old said, "Oh, I'm going to humanize dog psychology here. I'm a guest, so I need to be more polite." And so it stayed beyond the distance that caused the resident dog issue. And then when you did that thing right there, what you incorporated was a social form of pressure. So now the dog can see its own kind and come down in its anxiety because the resident dog isn't doing the human thing, thinking this or that, and I'm going to do that, and it causes other problem. It is just a dog.
And that's really important, Linn, that you just mentioned that social pressure, because when we ended up walking away, so the foster dog was in a crate when we left. The resident dog was not in a crate. So she went to the front door and waited for us, so that the foster dog was thinking everybody left me. And so when I walked in the door, that's the other thing that I noticed, is that dog was waiting for us. So the foster dog thinks that everybody left. And so because she can't see around the corner, so when we come back in, she sees us come in with the dog. So she thought everybody left. So she was by herself. So I said, okay, let's have her be comfortable, because the dogs are going to stay together. So that was another reason why I grouped them together in that particular event, so that she can.
I like that you put the dog behind the resident one, so it can't see beyond that. That's a good use of social pressure, even though the resident dog wasn't part of that. It's just going to be a dog.
And so a lot of this time, anytime I go to an appointment, and like I've had some people that have gone with me to an appointment, they're like, how did you come up with that idea? I'm like, I don't know. It just kind of came to me at the moment. So it's not something that I saw. It is something that I see, but it's not something that I was taught. And so
it's a good thing that what you're talking about right there, Art, is that you have an awareness of dog psychology. You've got experience in the field. And so when you are presented with something newish, you have this vision you aren't using yet. And so when this thing that goes outside of your regular vision is there, your other vision comes forward a little bit and gives you that awareness. Oh, I could do this. It just wasn't available to you to think about in other cases. But when you were presented with something that was further out than what you would normally deal with, it opens up the vision to opportunities in that area where it's further beyond. Does that make sense to you?
Total sense.
So that's because
a good thing. There's actually an analogy that I say, and before the light bulb was invented, no one could ever conceive the possibility of harnessing light in a glass bulb. It just didn't exist. It didn't mean that electricity didn't exist, and didn't mean that light didn't exist. It existed, but not in that form, until someone created it and said, wow, we can harness the energy of this particular bulb, right? And so that's actually how when I don't have words for certain things, or I don't know what I'm going to do with certain dogs, just because it hasn't been done before, at least I haven't done it, doesn't mean that it can't be done.
That's right.
So, as I look at these cases and I look at some of the dogs that I'm working with, I look at, okay, this is what I've done, but what is my awareness telling me at this point? What should I do because of what I see? So I try to see everything. What am I trying to create? That's something I always ask myself. How do I feel? What am I trying to create? How do I feel? What am I trying to create? So what am I trying to create with this particular dog in this case? So how can we get it so it's not, like you said, I recognize it's a relationship issue. I recognize that the dog was feeling FOMO, feeling left out because everybody was leaving. So how can we, right? How can we make that dog feel comfortable? The dog was perfect in the crate, would sleep as long as the person was in eyesight.
So that tells you what the pattern suggests that was happening before this dog came here.
Yeah.
It's only been a year. Those are powerful months. And whoever had the dog before probably never let it out of sight, or the dog never let.
That's actually what she said. She was like, I kind of get the feeling that's what happened.
Yeah. So if you use your light bulb thing there, look at all the different things that came after the light bulb that couldn't have come until the light bulb. So it's a great analogy because it's a light bulb moment. See what I did there?
Yep.
Okay, that's cool, Art. So now what you've done is you've created a larger range or a bigger range for yourself. Now, if you don't do anything, and I'm going to use my hands if anybody's watching, this is this is where you were. This is what was presented to you. So now you're here. If you don't use that space in between here and here enough, it will recede back to what you always did. You'll have to be presented again with something that causes you or forces you to see the things around the illuminated area that the light bulb created. So I use this analogy all the time. In Marine Corps, we'd have pop-up flares. The idea is you pop that flare, so you have, I can't recall how many seconds you have until that thing floats down and is no longer lighting the canopy area. But while it's up, you're supposed to be looking at all the different opportunities, where the enemy is, the avenues, blah, 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 blah. You don't keep your eyes closed, because then when the light goes out, you can't see again. It's supposed to be that moment that this is awareness. That's why I'm teaching awareness. It's a moment to take in everything that is illuminated, process it and use it. And then after that, it's in your bag to then utilize down the line without the light.
Todd, we lost you for a minute, but you're back.
Yeah, my phone overheated. I lost you when
You're at the beach.
When you were describing the case. So I'm on the boat.
That's cool, man.
So
I thought maybe a croc.
Do you have your flippy floppies?
They hunt alligators. People have been bit on the lake that we're on here. A girl, like a 12-year-old girl, was bit. She poked it in the eyes. There's a story about it. It was about 3 years ago. And then a guy, and I don't remember if it took his leg or not, but another guy was bit training for a triathlon on the other side. So they get some big alligators out here. I wouldn't let my dog swim in this lake ever. I would not.
I just saw a video in Houston of this huge alligator that was coming into the swimming area. I didn't even know that there would be alligators in Texas.
Yeah, there's alligators in Dallas.
What?
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, we get a lot of. It's one of those things. It's like lightning strikes. A lot of people lose their dogs out here, but you don't hear about them unless they're big dogs and big gators. But there's plenty of little 30-pound and less dogs that just get taken all the time because they're looking for deer. They don't have a fear of humans anymore like they used to. The numbers are up, the sizes are up, and so yeah. So Art, it sounded like you were talking about a separation anxiety case or an anxiety case that had a separation element to it.
Yep.
Well, humans cause it all, or they add to it, or they make it, they solidify it. And I think you got in there good enough time with this person that she can overcome this issue and keep this dog. There are a lot of great dogs out there that just have one issue. And if we could just focus on it without humanizing, then we could remove or at least solidify it in a way that it benefits us or manage it well enough. But we can't overlook the crying.
What do you think the biggest cause of the separation anxiety is in general? Like I see a pretty typical pattern. You've said something about the dog was never left alone. I've heard people say I had some lady who had like a terrible, terrible case. Said when the dog was little, she'd get anxious if somebody else pet it because she was worried that dog would like that person more than it liked her. And it got to the point where it was really, really bad. And I see that element in all of it. It's that.
I think you skipped over a really important part right there. The projection. She was worried that the dog is going to like the other human more than she likes her. That projection. Now that dog is so connected to how they're connected energetically. And so when the human feels this anxiety or fear, of course, the dog is going to start feeling it and reacting to it in the way that dog reacts to fear or anxiety. Other dogs that have fear and anxiety react differently. But yes, if that's a bad one, that's a selfish one right there. That's really bad. I get it too, but
it's always selfish.
Yeah.
But I think also a lot of times people don't realize that they're being selfish.
That's the point there.
I think sometimes they do, but we pick and choose easy things to avoid and easy things not to face. Think how many people that don't even know what they're doing. You ask them, they're not even aware that for 20 minutes they were petting their dog. There's a real lack of awareness, I think, for a lot of different reasons. But the selfish thing is like to say they don't know they're selfish sometimes is giving a little bit too much leeway for them. I think some people need the pressure of like, hey, take a step back. You know, you don't have a right to this dog.
I've got a dog named Ace. You may have seen him in my posts and everything. He had already had a little bit of separation anxiety from the owner before I got him. Now, I didn't experience any separation anxiety from him, but I'm starting to see things now that I need to address. I'm home so much now. It's going to change once the weather changes, but I haven't traveled in a long time. And we're at a point now, this is a tiny thing that no one would probably even consider it. But because I look at it and then I can see other problems, it has to be building some sort of separation anxiety. He won't go to, you know, I always use Casa Casa, and it's a neat little thing where they all run to their same casa, like Edward Scissorhand, everybody coming out of the garage at the same time to go to work.
Casa's crate, right?
Casa means house.
House. Yeah. Come on, Art.
I know what it means, but like, of course I know what it means. I speak
crate.
Spanish.
I say Casa Casa, and they run to their crates. But he won't go to his crate, and he always did. He won't go to his crate. He comes back and stays with me while I'm putting, shutting the crate doors for the other dog. I'm like, go to your casa, and he'll look at it and he'll come back, and I'm like, okay, he's starting. I got to pay more attention to whether he's clinging to me in other areas, because that is not normal. The only thing different is I moved the crates around, but he didn't have a problem with it first. But now he's not going to it. So now the other issue is they have new beds. And each time I reach in to say hi to them when they come out, they get a little shock. And so maybe it's that. See, there's multiple ways this could go, but I already know he has a history with separation anxiety. And it's just so different, so weird for him not to do that.
Let me ask you this, then. What would you do about it? Because this is something that we all go through, but the one thing that makes it easier for us to not end up with a long-term problem is that we catch it early. You know, like we had trees cut down and they hit the ground real hard. And then I had a dog that didn't want to cross a threshold after that. And just like you were saying, I'm kind of guessing if this is what it was, since we'll never maybe know if it's the shock or you maybe know the scent changed or the placement of the crate changed. What's your go-to thing? Like when you see a dog suddenly not do something that they were doing, how do you deal with it?
Once you become aware of it, you begin again. Now, I literally just became aware of this last night, and we're talking about this. I'm like, this is a good time for me to talk about it. So then I will address it. So now I'm just going to begin again and act as if he's never been taught or understood to go to his crate when I say Casa Casa. He doesn't exhibit any anxiety, but it's that clinging thing.
It's the change. It doesn't have to be anxiety. It's that it was there and now it's not, or it wasn't there and now it is. And that ability to kind of see it and catch it early, so that it doesn't become, what's the matter, buddy? Why aren't you going in the crate? And then all of a sudden you've got this thing. When I got my mother-in-law's dog, when you would say, Maggie, come here, that meant turn around and run away. I mean, so it was so misprogrammed that somebody had been doing the wrong thing for years. And that pattern recognition is really, it'll keep you from beating your ass over and over again of a problem.
Well,
is this a rule number 9?
Were you saying that, Art? Yeah, it's rule number 9. When something's new and different, everything is new and different until a new normal is established. So whenever, whatever, anything that your dog is doing now that isn't the same, I would highly recommend putting a marker in the ground right there where you find out where it's not the same, and do a perimeter, wide range, and find where it's different. Like that thing with the threshold in the trees. I might ask you questions like, were you irritated with or was anybody in the house irritated with the tree slam? Were you bummed? Was it getting in the way? Maybe you expressed emotion.
Nobody was home. No, so
By the way,
what's that?
Go ahead. I was going to mention something because when you talk about, sometimes we may not know, because he got new beds. He knew there was a good possibility it was the new beds, but sometimes we may not know what that is, right? But we have to look at it as like, we know how to work them through it, to work them, around it. And,
right.
With my dog Buddha one day, because, at night he sleeps, in the laundry room here. I wake up one night and the baby gate is knocked over. He's panicking. I'm like, what in the world's going on? And I'm like, what happened? But he's like, you could tell like something, like he was almost like panting a lot. He was kind of anxious. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then as I'm like just kind of looking around, maybe something had come in. I was just kind of curious. And at that moment, we had a bunch of, it was when the summer started, we had a bunch of mosquitoes. And I had one of those bug zapper things, those table bug zappers. And so anytime he would hear anytime he heard that sound, he would panic. But I didn't know that because when I walked in, that wasn't there. But I'm like looking around, then I heard it, and then he like, and I was like, that's what it was.
So that probably threw him into the baby gate, which knocked that over, which added to the. So the only reason why I threw in the beds is because literally before we got on here, Long Socks wouldn't go into his casa, but he wasn't clinging to me. He just was right at the threshold and just wouldn't go in. He wasn't looking like I'm going to get shocked or anything, but he just wouldn't go. I'm like, what is going on? It's the only reason why I came up with that. So one rule number 9 led to another rule number 9, which you will find the answer by looking at what is different. Detectives do it all the time, you know? So I'm excited to go figure that out. Whoop, we lost Todd again. But so with Buddha and those fly zapper things, that can really cause a lot of anxiety for a bunch of dogs. And so you almost have to decide whether it's worth it to have the thing if they can't get past it. So here's one of the times I might use food. When he gets zapped, call him to me. Give him food. So he may not take the food right when you start chasing after him with it. When he hears the zap, you got to call him to you, get this. So then you can remove the calling him to you. After the zap, you call him, it gets a treat. Zap, call, gets a treat. Once that's happening enough, then you don't call. You can toss him the treat, or especially if he hears the zap and he starts to look toward you, don't call him anymore. Give him the treat. But you may have that trouble right now, whether he would even take a treat when he gets a little anxious. Are you going to?
So the other thing that I was having a conversation with Ann the other day because, it's been really dry here, and I walked over some carpet and I touched the doorknob and I got a little zap.
Yeah.
And so I started to ask myself, I bet you this happens to a lot of dogs, and like how that can come out as behavior. And people like, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden he's become very fearful. And these little things, the environment, even, people can not know that their dog just got zapped because it built up static electricity,
Well, that's why environment, the situation, and the perceivers involved are the 3 foundational components. So when I had my facility, I got all those blankets, those really soft blankets, they've got a felt to them, but they collect a lot of static electricity. They were very inexpensive, and I bought a ton of them, put in the crates, and I kept finding most of the dogs would push them to the corner, and I'd come in and go, oh, you messed up your bed, and put it down, and I'm like, oh, I just fixed this. So I ended up getting rid of hundreds of dollars I took them to Goodwill, but the static electricity, could you imagine being stuck in something that every time you moved, you got shocked? So yeah, that's it's crazy. The sound of that zap flies must
What's
really.
Up, Todd?
One of the the most clever ones, like problem solving wise, I was a TCW student. I think I've told you about this one. I had just gotten back from Hong Kong, and I had been in this high rise buildings, and I would be, you're in these 30, 40 floors. Yeah. And I'd be walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden I'd get this weird, discombobulated kind of, my inner balance was off. And I happened to be watching some show, and they said that there's the architects have to factor in, everybody's got a different sensitivity to the movement of these buildings, and they gave it a name. Because when I almost had a panic attack when it first started happening, because my whole affect was like, what the fuck is this? And I was all weirded out. And one of the students was there, and she lived in Manhattan, and said she had spent like $50,000 on a vet trying to figure out why her dog kept throwing up, and nobody could come up with it. And I go, I don't know if this is it or not, but I was just, in a place where tall buildings were there, and I had this weird sensitivity to it. And I go, I wonder if that's the case. And a few weeks later, she sent me an email, and she said that they had discovered that every time the wind was over 12 or 15 miles an hour and the building had a certain amount of sway, the dog was getting sick. So it ended up they had to just give it Dramamine or something at that particular time. And,
buildings in those. Sorry, go ahead.
That's right.
I was saying those buildings in areas like Hong Kong and LA, the new ones are built on top of kind of a rolling system, so they have a bigger sway at the base, and so then they get the top sway, and even when the wind goes. But yeah, so that when the earthquakes, they kind of roll instead of crumble, and maybe that's what that building was done. But that's amazing.
No, this was in Manhattan, so this was they don't have the earth. They're not built for the earthquakes there, but they're just tall, and it's just the wind will make them move. It's just the normal
palm tree.
And I was real sensitive to it. And yeah, so it's just paying attention. And it's also allowing yourself to be wrong, to be able to guess something and it not be right.
That's a good one.
Move past it and be like, nope, that wasn't it.
I love being wrong, mainly for rule number 7, because once you know, you can't not know. So anytime I'm wrong, I want, especially if it's been brought to my attention, I want to know every detail. A lot of people think, you're trying to defend yourself. No, I need to know. I need to know everything, so I never have that again. It's a process inside my brain, but that's information. Never ignore information. Being wrong is the best information that you can achieve, that you can receive to improve.
I think the students don't understand. TCW, Caesar's up there and he's doing something with the treadmill and the dog. How many times he's changing his plan? And he doesn't talk about it. So but we can see it, and I have a friend of mine who trains dogs, and he asked me a long time ago, he goes, how can you handle doing something that doesn't work in front of a client? He goes, I have a really hard time with that. I'm like, shit, dude, I throw everything at the wall. I'm like, whatever sticks, sticks. And so some people out there, I just have a can't be wrong mentality. And I think that is a hindrance. It's definitely a strength. I get where it's coming from, but you have to commit to something and then allow for failure, because you got to be able to assess it the right way and then go right back to committing to it. And it takes a while. It takes a while to be super confident, but know what you're doing might not be working, but act as if it's working all simultaneously.
Well, sometimes when I'm working with a dog, if I'm in the middle of it, if I'm with a client, I'm like, I'll kind of just whisper to myself, well, that's not working. And I just change. But I just admit it like that. Okay, this is not working. And I just go to the next thing. I don't dwell in it and sit in it. I just move on. That's what a dog would do.
Yeah.
If it's something that I'm telling a client that they need to do or learn, and it's not working, which is the best opportunity to explain exactly what's going on, especially if it's not working for me. Look, I'm giving you a plan here. It's not even working for me. Let's adjust it. This is what I'm going to do now. And then ultimately, we'll get back to that original plan. So the original plan was for the masses that you try to do, but sometimes there's a dog or a human on either side of extremes. And then you work your way to that middle where the structure that you always use has worked. But I teach through my mistakes. That's what has to happen. I want people to know. I don't even use techniques anymore because I don't want it done fast, because then everybody tries to do them and they harm. So I go out of my way to take the time to show, look, if you just wait right here, you take a little bit of time there, you can see the dog processing it, and you don't have to do any corrections. And then everything goes much faster. Mistakes are critical. Now, embarrassing sometimes, sure.
Sometimes I will even, so I teach a group class, and I will allow the clients to struggle a little bit because
that's good.
A lot of times that's when they really ask for help, because they can see, it could be even a tool. For example, like when I teach a class, everyone gets a slip lead, but I tell people, you don't need to use it if you're not comfortable with it. And I'll have dogs that are already on them and they see how well they're doing. And then I let the owner come to their own conclusion. I want to go that route. I don't ever force it on them. You have to use this. And sometimes we'll get people on harnesses and they'll be there for the first 2 weeks on harnesses. And they're like, yeah, this isn't working. I'm like, yeah, it's not, I can help you. I'll do the best I can with what I have using the harness, but I can show you another way. And they're like, yes,
make it
please
work
show
with
me.
The harness. It just is a longer route.
Exactly. And so you make people open to the idea of, what you're going to share. It's the same thing with the dogs. I want the dogs to come to their own conclusion. And a lot of times I want the owners to come to their own conclusion, because that's how you teach them. But I'm using that struggle to open them up, then to teach them in a way.
Adversity is an amazing educator.
Well, I don't learn through getting it right anymore. Do you? I don't learn from walking away going, yeah, I expected that. I learn from the ones that it's like, hey, I expected that didn't happen, and then I moved to that, and I changed to that, and then that happened. So to me, my lessons are adversity lessons almost exclusively anymore, at least in the dog world. It's different in other places, but
it's an important thing for people to, if you're in this industry, to learn how to do. Your friend that's a dog trainer that can't handle it, then that is his only focus, should be his only focus. I need to go out and make mistakes, and I need to go out and have something not work. I need to go out and do this so I can get past that. If that's an issue for somebody, that's the only thing I would focus on. That's the kink in the hose.
Well, I know, like, cause I spent a lot of time with both of you guys. I know Linn and Todd, you guys haven't seen each other in a long time in person. But I remember this one time at TCW, Todd, I don't know exactly what the case, I think it was a pug that was on a wheelchair. I don't know if you remember this. If you don't remember it, you're not gonna be able to help me out, but
pug in a wheelchair is pretty memorable, I think.
Yeah, that is in itself, but I don't know what the case was or what we decided to do. But we were kind of we were talking outside, we were talking about the case, and I said, hey, why don't we do this? And you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, yes, let's try that. And I don't remember if we did it or not. But that happens a lot, whether I'm with Todd or Linn, like, hey, like, why don't we try this? Why don't we just kind of brainstorm certain things, sir? And so
that's the key right there, is taking that time to try and find the thing that will be Goldilocks. It's the people just, they'll do this, they'll do that, and not realize that there's a process to it that makes it look horrible. But when we take our time, and it's something that a dog trainer isn't in their science book, they can look, oh, you're just making stuff up on the fly. Well, yeah, but making it up on the fly based on everything that we do with dog psychology. So it's peripheral, it's Beverly Hills adjacent. So it's not making it up like, oh, I'll try this thing. No, it's...
And I think this comes with experience too, because that's why I get a kick, on Instagram when like, people will say you should always, because it really just depends. It really
those
does
words
depend.
You can't use. You can say
use and always sometimes, but those are specific. Don't ever do that. It's
got to be super, super, super fundamental, and there's always an outlier. So yeah, you definitely have to be careful with those words. They're a little rigid.
Like, for instance, it's all right to call out doggy daddy or whatever he is, because there's a big campaign about him. But he was showing, I saw a little video clip, no voice or anything, but he was showing like the liver or spleen grabbing hold of that. I'm like, what the fuck? Not a single dog owner needs to know that. And 99% of the dog people out there that work with dogs don't need to know that, because now it's a fucking trick and I'm going to use it all the time. He's lucky if it was the spleen where he's grabbing, he's lucky that it didn't cry for 10 fucking minutes. I accidentally bumped one of my own dogs by accident in the spleen, and she cried for almost 10 minutes. I was like, oh my God, it's very painful. So yeah, never. Never.
I watched a video of him. He was getting a dog in a pool, and that's where you could really see his nature was there, because he's even correcting avoidance. And
it's horrible.
So that was, I had never seen it work in something like that, but that's where I was like, oh, so it's just turn the burners on and go the whole time.
He's got some qualities that if he didn't have the other horrible things about him, I could make a really good, somebody out of him. But he's too into the clown suit and all of that. He's now on his own campaign. He's fighting back, so he's not. It won't be long before he implodes.
Did you ever meet Vlade, the Russian dog wizard? Did you guys ever meet him?
Oh, that guy.
No, but I know the story.
A couple of things, but thank God it was just a couple.
Yeah, so that guy years and years ago, he got in touch with me, and I think, I don't know, did I meet him or just do a radio show? No, I met him. He was wearing a big purple suit. And then I did a radio show with him one time, and it was one of the funniest things, though. So this lady calls in with a question, and she's like, why does my dog run out the door every time I open the door? And in my mind, I'm going, maybe the dog doesn't like you. The first thing I'm thinking is maybe the dog doesn't like you. And the lady goes, Vlade, what do you think it was? And he's like, I don't know. Maybe the lady's a bitch, no? And ever since then, dude, he's gone down in kind of some history in the back of my mind as like one of the best one-liners. And the lady's like, no, Vlade, no. What do you think it really is? And he's like, no, maybe he doesn't like her. It was pretty good.
I think he changed his name. I think he changed his name.
Oh, really? But it was interesting. I remember him telling me that somebody in his family was a famous Russian scientist that studied foxes back in the day. And there's been a lot of
the guy who domesticated the foxes, he said he's related to him.
No, I don't know if it was that. He was connected to a guy that did a lot of studying of foxes in Russia, and I know that there's a whole bunch of that. There's actually, if you guys, the people listening, you want to study some really interesting shit, is study the street dogs in Russia, because they're one of the most observed dog like interactions outside of the human world. And what they find is things like the smartest dog leads the group, right? So they're working into a different level of what's leading and so forth. There's some interesting shit comes out of Russia with all the dogs that live on the subways and live on the streets and pack up, and the way that they hunt and all.
It is interesting, not just in Russia but anywhere there's a lot of homeless dogs. They just they have a whole little system going there, and it's pretty wild to watch. But yeah, that guy, I think I did meet him at an IACP thing, and he did have a purple thing on it. And he had
I was with you when you met him.
Super thin little stash across the hair. Just, I mean, why not just shake it all off?
Pet correctors. He had.
Yes, that's what he's trying to sell us. He was here, try this. I'm like, get that thing away from me, man. And there was a pet corrector. It had like a CO2 cartridge and a little button on it. It wasn't like the aerosol can that you can buy. It was a full powerful thing. I bought some actually, but not because of him. And then I'm like, okay, well, these will just sit here and rot. But the people. All
right, this was a really good episode, guys. Until next time, we'll see you next episode. Bye.
Woof.